there are layers of intervention that the media will need to use in staying afloat. COVID-19 or no COVID-19 is a year that the media will need to struggle to stay afloat. I'm aware, for example, that the Nigerian Union of Journalists sent a letter to the federal government requesting for some form of intervention. Yes. Brilliant idea, no doubt, but that, in my opinion, is not the, perhaps it's not the best way in which to approach this sort of a thing, because we are in an unusual year, without a doubt. And like I said earlier, COVID-19 has only added to the recession that had been on for about a dozen years, for which the Nigerian media has yet to recover. So this is not about NUJ writing the federal government. The entire media machinery will have to make a proposition to the government on the one hand, and of course on the other hand, they will also need to understand that the game has changed and the times are different. Yeah, we've always been saying that the future of our profession was digital, but the future is actually now. There's no future that we're waiting for anymore. We're there. When the age in which you have to creatively digitalize or you sink. And this is not to denigrate practitioners in the media that they have not been doing well. What I'm trying to say is that with us not having come out of the recession of 2008, 2009, with COVID-19 being around, which will disrupt things further, and with the Minister of Finance saying that it's unlikely that we will escape another recession as a result of COVID-19, it therefore becomes very imperative for the entire media machinery to come together and to look for ways, project to the authorities, discuss among themselves about ways in which they will need to stay afloat. We'll be scratching the surface if we are saying that Punch or Nation or TVC or City People or channels are trying to downsize, are trying to do this and that. That's individualistic. Yes, you will get by, you will save some money, but ultimately, that's not what will save the media. We'll have to think a lot deeper. And you know, between you and I, that both the recession and COVID-19 will hit the print industry much more than the broadcast. Yeah, much more than those who have defined their space as online, platforms. And therefore, what needs to be done is first and foremost to politely challenge the wisdom in which the supervising ministry for our industry will be dealing more with the creative industries, with the performing creative industries, much more than the media industry. Okay. As you are aware, not only Lagos State, but indeed the federal government has constituted a committee led by, our friend Ali Baba, chaired by Ali Baba, to look at ways in which COVID-19 has affected the industry. And they have, put together about a 20-man committee with, I believe, just the secretary being somebody representing the media industry from Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria. Creative industries is just one aspect of the ecosystem that the Honorable Minister supervises. Information, which deals with media apparatus, is actually the first leg of, those two pillars that the minister supervises. And therefore, there must be an elaborate engagement way to discuss with those who have invested over the years in the media industry. Everybody is talking bailout. Everybody is talking intervention. And for crying out loud, there's nothing wrong in demanding that the government should look, in their direction. And I'm talking in terms of the Newspapers Proprietors Association. I'm talking in terms of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. I'm talking in terms of the NGE. And I'm talking in terms of the associations and organizations that represent the TV owners, the radio broadcasters, and indeed the social media people. But as I said, it's a lot more dire for the print industry because of how badly it's been hit over the years, particularly in the last 12 to 15 years. And therefore, there should be, because COVID-19, as we have it, if again we check with history what happened about 100 years ago, it's likely that, yes, we're still struggling in this part of the world with the first wave of the disease. It is likely that a second wave might happen. It's likely that a third wave might happen. So in discussing how the government could be of assistance, and assistance does not necessarily mean handing over money to proprietors or to individuals in the sector. It means looking at policies that can work, looking at palliatives that can ensure that City People continues to exist, that Ovation International continues to exist, that Punch Nigeria Limited, that Vintage Press Limited that publishes Nation, channels, etc., that they continue to exist if they sit down one-on-one with the government and say, we're not necessarily asking for you to give us money to pay salaries, but we're saying that because we import most of the things that we need, if there are sort of waivers for the next 6 months, or maybe for the next 1 year, if there could be considerations in terms of taxes, for example, we'll be able to stay afloat so that we wouldn't have to downsize needlessly. Yes, this will consume a number of jobs, but hang on, look at the banking sector, for example. One of the big top 5 banks was going to downsize, but then the central bank, whether it was the right of the central bank or not, to intervene, says, for the sake of the economy, for the sake of the country, and for the sake of those who will be involved, please don't downsize. So I'm saying that that can also be applied to the media industry. Whatever considerations that are being made for the creative industries from the Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism, there shouldn't be a neglect of the media industry too. And therefore, things that we need to be done to ensure that the media industry stays afloat for the next 6 months to 2 years is important, that all the stakeholders will come together and discuss. But SK, sir, that's just one part of the things that we need to do. I think that the recession that we are yet to escape, coupled with the COVID-19 that we are dealing with, and the recession that might come again, in a brutal form because of what we're experiencing, I think provide an opportunity for the media industry to now plan beyond just surviving the next 6 months to 2 years. And what am I trying to say? I'm saying that this is the beginning of a new decade. I do not think that history will forgive us, especially those who are the helm of affairs of the media industry, of the news media in general, not to now use the opportunity of demanding an interface with government to say, let us among ourselves design and devise a 10-year program that can ensure that the media will always withstand rough weather, bad times, etc. So I think that there should be a kind of interventionist master plan for the next 1 decade, starting from next year, of what needs to be done. Yes, this is the year of survival. As Jack Ma said, forget about the 3 Ps, forget about profits, projections, and planning. Survive first. But then in surviving for the media for this year, let us plan for the next 10 years. If you again, coming back to the print industry, which you and I know quite a bit about.
Yes.
Newspapers and magazines will not necessarily die.
Okay.
Not in our generation. Okay. But they will struggle. They will struggle, and they will, it will be tough. But I'm saying that if there is a policy document that, for one, giving them an idea as to the sort of thing that needs to be done, is to latch on to one of the key achievements of this present administration, which is reviving the rail services. I'm aware about a decade ago of a research in Europe and in Asia, which challenged the America-based idea, which Africa has lapped onto, that the media, especially the print media, will die soon. And the challenge from Europe and Asia was that part of the reason why newspapers were dying or were, reducing in sales in America is because the rail service in America is very poor compared to what you have in Asia and in Europe. And wherever you have the rail service, the tendency to have a better delivery system is always very high. Rail didn't even exist at all, more or less in Nigeria. Now that the rails are returning, and we believe that if they return, they will last, they will endure for a long time. That gives an opportunity for the media managers to say that if we key into the research that was done 10 years ago, that showed clearly that, on the contrary, in spite of the digital revolution, newspapers were actually selling a lot more in Asia, namely in India, in China, in Japan, in Korea, and in some, countries in Europe. Essentially because rail services were in top notch, because the cost of newspapers are low, and because most of the things that they were using are sourced locally. So the last time we heard of Okwiboku was in 2016, when about 5 billion naira proposition or thereabout was made to revive Okwiboku. So I'm saying that if we latch on to the possibility of the rail coming back in full form and enduring for years to come, they can be a good avenue for us to improve on our distribution. Part of the reason, in my opinion, why newspapers don't sell, and you and I know when City People was printed with Punch, we knew the number of thousands that you came with, and then over about 5 years, how it came down drastically. Disposable income might be a factor, but part of the problem was that the paper or the magazine couldn't get to where it needed to get to in real time. And that does not, detract from the fact that even City People, as you are doing now, you have also keyed into the digital revolution, which clearly, underpins one of the survival strategies that media industries will need to do, whether you're a TV station or a radio. Even for radio, you see these days that practically every star presenter on radio is also live on social media, thereby driving traffic to the radio station that you are listening to. Same thing for TV stations. If you're not home, you either be watching it, on your phone, or you hook up with the YouTube channel. So definitely, yes, social media is important. But what is actually more important is that let us ensure that the institutions that provide quality news, verifiable news, authentic news, do not die. And we have a reference on our hands, apart from what happened 100 years ago. In 2008, you probably will remember that President Obama in the US actually made a case during the little recession of 2008, 2009 for the survival of newspapers in America. And his reason was that the intervention was needed so that America will not leave news dissemination to only the social media. If you link that to what President Trump is doing now, which he has just, put up an order regarding the regulation of social media. You might disagree with some aspect of what he's trying to do, but basically, he's saying that at every critical juncture, if it looks like a monopoly that will be injurious to quality news and free speech is about to happen, government holds the right to intervene. And I think that if you combine that, which is basically trying to say that we shouldn't leave news dissemination to just one source. People will salivate about the fact that, oh yes, everybody's a journalist now. You can always get whatever you need on the internet. Yes, you can get whatever you need on the internet, but get it from the right source. And therefore, part of the propositions, in my opinion, that the leadership of the Nigerian media should put forward for the next 10 years, again, as I said, like a policy document to show the roadmap, is to ensure that the citizens are duly informed about the fact that not everything that you see on social media is correct. And the need to rely for authentic news on social media is also very important. Who will give authentic news? It is those who are trained in the business of news management. And for them to survive, they will need to also be able to exist, whether online or in physical form, in print, etc. They will need to survive first. And therefore, the managers and proprietors of structures that ensure that authentic news is disseminated must come together and insist that not everybody is a journalist, and insist that the whole idea of citizen journalism does not necessarily apply to news generation. It applies more to engaging with the news. If I am an ordinary citizen and I witness a crime or something untoward on the street, yes, I've got my phone to record it and post it. But guess what? That is not the end of the story for an average news consumer. What a City People, what a Punch, what a Nation, what the Guardian or This Day will therefore do will be to go beyond just posting the fact that a policeman is harassing an innocent citizen, and to make sure that the processes of disciplining that officer is done, speak to the families of the brutalized or the victimized person, and editorialize on why that shouldn't continue. That is news, and not everybody is able to do that. The follow-ups, the authenticity, ensuring that there's no bias, and going with the authority of a news journalist to demand information from authorities, to confirm from the police if something is true, rests only with those who are trained and who are conscientious about how news should be promoted. It is for the survivor of the structures that ensure, that authentic news is that we must ensure that the media does not die. If we don't, we'll be faced with an all-commerce affair. We'll be faced with the kind of a thing that China and Russia ran away from. We'll be faced with the kind of a thing that even America is now dealing with. The same way that President Obama tried to intervene to make sure that authentic and traditional and media institutions do not die, so that we won't have to rely on misinformation as our source of news.